Hello! Welcome back to Boxes and Bubbles, where today we're gonna get serious.
It's no secret that black comics are having a moment. Moment feels too small a word, really. This is an age, an era of a huge amount of excellent black comics, creators, and characters. It's awesome, in the literal old-school dictionary sense of the word. The subject is particularly relevant recently because 3 black comics just won Eisner Awards. Bitterroot for Best Continuing Series, Philadelphia for Best New Series, and The Other History of the DC Universe Issue 1 for Best Single Issue. Besides those, the past year has also had Far Sector, Shadow Doctor, Black Panther, Excellence, Mr. Miracle, Static, and the Next Batman. And this list isn't including books about non-white characters of other ethnicities, or black characters featured in a series written by non-black creators. Also worthy of note is the current Miles Morales Spider-Man series, featuring a black Hispanic Spider-Man, but written by Saladin Ahmed, a person of color, but one who's not black or Hispanic. I don't think it's for me to unpack that. But let's pause for a second. I am fully aware that I am severely underqualified to speak on this. Firstly, I only began reading the fresh new comics every Wednesday about 3 and a bit years ago. Before that, I was dipping my toes in all kinds of previously released stuff. Before the bug of shiny new stuff bit me, and these days, I rarely have time to read anything that didn't come out last Wednesday, because there's so much good stuff. So, for me to proclaim that this is an amazing era is a bit biased, really. I don't have a giant frame of reference, and I can't compare the last few years to decades previous. That said, even from the time I started to seriously read comics compared to now, there was a definite trickle which became a wave. Secondly, as I'm sure you've noticed, I'm white. And a man. Not only that, I'm a white British man. Not only that, I'm a white British man living in Japan. To say that I'm quite distant from the black experience is an understatement. Nonetheless, without going too deeply and dissecting the minutiae, I empathize with people in general as a human being. And one group I particularly empathize with are those people who don't happen to be white. Even if we're not talking about media that has a point to make about social issues, I'm drawn to the attitudes, personalities, and cultures of people of color. So while I can't, won't, and don't presume to ever speak for anyone other than myself, what I can speak to is the effect that this sea change is having for me and for the pastime I've fallen in love with, as somebody who embraces, supports, and is enthused about it. What makes comics so special as a medium to me is the absolute freedom of storytelling that comes with it. Without studios, actors, giant budgets, and special effects to consider, creators can tell any kind of story they want to. And I think that's part of the reason that black comics are shining and thriving. Black people have things to say, and comics provide countless ways to present the black experience without needing to downplay, censor, or homogenize. So that leads us nicely to today's book. Dark Blood #1, written by Latoya Morgan, published by Boom Studios, art by Walt Barna, colors by A.H.G, and letters by Andworld Design. This is the first comic review where it's impossible for me to really talk about the book without spoiling one of the pivotal moments. That said though, there is one story beat I was able to omit, so I don't need to spoil absolutely everything. And this first issue very much feels like setup. The real threads of mystery come most into play on the very last page. So while I'm not going to be able to say no spoilers about this one, what there is for me to spoil feels like only the very beginning. It's a quick read but an interesting one, and right away the first thing that we read is The Night of the Variants, Alabama 1955. What is the variance? We don't know, but it is noteworthy that it's tonight, given how the rest of the issue shakes out. A man nicknamed AA leaves his job working at a diner to go home for the night. He notices that he's being followed by a white man and says to himself, "Don't panic, breathe." I thought that this was a succinct and brilliant piece of writing. Just 3 words give us all we need to know to start feeling the tension in the air. That feeling in your muscles like static when you know something bad is about to happen. We know that AA is just waiting for whatever's going to happen. And of course, something does happen. The man is clearly looking to start some trouble, and AA's fearful eyes serve as a transition to another time in which he felt terror just like this. 10 years prior, which would be 1945, the very end of World War II, when he was flying a fighter plane which had lost control behind enemy lines. There's a big parallel here, going down behind enemy lines and being in the wrong part of the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, along with the comparison of war to racial tensions, of us versus them, of knowing the enemy is out to get you. There's one other thing that struck me here, that this man, AA, fought for a country during the war, a country which upon his return did not offer him equal rights. The war is over, but fighting for his life is still not a thing of the past. The man following him asks him why his co-worker had earlier referred to him as AA, and AA tells him that it's because he did time in the army. But even this does nothing to change the guy's attitude. In fact, he's snotty about it and gets even more aggressive, asking, "You think you're better than me?" AA stays calm, and on the man's insistence even refers to him as Sir. Regardless, the jackass pulls a gun on AA, who until this point has repeatedly stated that he just wants to go home and doesn't want any trouble. When the man tells AA to tell him that he's scared, he does it, but he says, "I'm scared, just not for me." AA is still calm, even as the guy cocks his gun, and he pleads, "Don't! to the man, who responds with the first time I have ever seen a full-on, uncensored N-bomb in a comic book, which struck me as a very brave move by Boom Studios. I've literally never seen it printed in its entirety in a comic book before, and in this context, to tell this kind of story, I feel like having it there is both justified and powerful. And speaking of powerful, the next page is this awesome full-page picture of Double A's powers awakening. Stuff around him begins to levitate and his eyes glow. The pose that he's in here is super dramatic, and the way the shadows fall around his face with his brow furrowed like that and the look in his eyes makes him look super menacing. I thought this page was so cool, but my favorite page of the whole book comes after this, when the man fires his gun and we get to see the bullet making its way towards Double A. What I really liked about it is how the bullet has passed through a bottle, which is smashing in the freeze frame that we get to see, and there's this cool halo effect to really show the impact and the bullet's speed. All of the art in this book is nice, but these two full pages are where it really sang for me. Double A's powers, which at least so far look like telekinesis, allow him to stop the bullet before it hits him, though the effort causes his nose to start bleeding, which is never a good sign. The man is terrified by this and flees the scene, and Double A does too. But that isn't the end of the troubles with this man, and things go from bad to worse. As he's fleeing the alley, Double A falls in the snow, and we get another flashback of his time in the military. Directly following on from the previous one, escaping his down plane, he wakes up from briefly passing out to realize that his chute is on fire. For a moment, it seems as if the enemy plane is flying directly towards him, and he closes his eyes, expecting to be eviscerated by the propeller. Miraculously, an ally fighter is able to shoot down the advancing plane just in time to save him from being chopped up. But there's still the matter of a parachute that's on fire. As he falls screaming once again, he wakes up in bed, sweating from his flashback dream, this time 6 months prior to the day that we just witnessed, and therefore 6 months before the variance. And this final page is where we get our unanswered questions. Given that last night was called the variance, what is it, and what does it mean? From the way that Double A was speaking, it definitely seems that he's aware of and has used his powers before, so I don't think it has to do with his powers activating. In the final page, 2 text boxes say, "No matter what happens, I will not let the world take you away from me." Is that Double A talking, or someone else? Someone calls up through the door. "Avery, we're waiting for you!" I'm sure we'll find out who that is in the next issue. Lastly, Avery's back is covered in a strange orange marking. What is that, and what does it have to do with his powers? So as I said before, a quick read, but one that's very interesting, with lots of information about who Avery is, his state of mind, and the powers he has, and some interesting questions to keep us intrigued and waiting for the next issue.
So, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's an awesome time to be reading Black comics by Black creators about Black characters, and I hope this continues long into the future. Until then though, if you're interested in any other books that came out recently, make sure to check out the rest of the channel for some other spoiler-free comic book reviews. And follow along on Twitter at Boxes and Bubbles to read reviews of books I just didn't have time to make videos for. That's all for this time, but I'll catch you in the next one.